This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie, the show where my guest and I chat about how the misogyny in our world affects our relationships to things in our lives, such as diet and meals. Today, our guest is Kiki. Kiki helps women overcome emotional eating habits and how to break ties with overthinking about food. Welcome to Team Tolerator, Kiki.
Yay, I've always wanted to be. I never, thought about it in that verbiage, but I've always wanted to be on this team.
Oh my
So thank
gosh.
you for welcoming me in.
No,
Yeah.
once you're on, usually I save this for the end of the episode, but once you're on the team, you always get to come back. You don't always have to talk to me about food. I'm sure there's other things you've tolerated.
Oh, I'm sure too.
So I was looking up your program online, the Mind Beauty, or now I'm going to mess up the word order. It's written right here in front of me. Mind, Body, and Beauty program. But I thought that you would be the better person to kind of give the listeners an overview of what your philosophy is with that program and everything in that sense.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, that program was really inspired by my own journey healing my relationship to food. I was really obsessed with wellness as a young adult. And of course, that brought me a lot of good things. I had felt better about my body. I started eating good and, exercising and doing all those good things that give you the nice, healthy endorphins and all that jazz. But then I took it to this extreme where I felt like my value and my identity was just all tied up in if I was eating gluten free or not. And I kind of sought out various ways to overcome this because I recognized that maybe physically I was doing okay, but mentally I was not. And then physically I was not as well, because if you're mentally not okay, eventually it manifests into physical symptoms. And so I was in this cycle of yo-yo gaining and losing weight. I had a lot of gut issues that just basically left me prisoner to my home. And so I got to this stage where I was like, oh my God, I don't even care about eating perfect anymore. I just want to eat like a normal person and live a normal life and get over this and just be able to go to a restaurant, order something, enjoy it, and then, move on. And so I had tried therapy. I had tried, of course, at the beginning, I tried all the like the Whole Foods diet plans that, are kind of packaged as if it's a lifestyle, not a diet. And of course, those didn't really work. And then I went down the rabbit hole of, mindful eating and intuitive eating. And I felt like for me, that was all very fluffy. And it was all very like, oh, like go love yourself and eat whatever you want. Like, which is, yes, we need to love and respect ourselves regardless of, where we're at or what we're eating. I get it. But I really needed structured support as to relearn my hunger cues, relearn how to understand my satiety, and really just get back into the rhythm of my body like I was able to when I was a child, where I would just naturally, sense into hunger, eat something that I like, and then move on, right? And so I found this method that really helped me do that. And it was a way that I could feel like I had boundaries and a guideline that didn't require me to give up any certain foods, that literally didn't require me to go on a diet, and yet I could still operate within these boundaries. And I say that they're the boundaries of the body, which are hunger and taste. And so that's really what I take women through now. It's this, I know it's like a cheesy name, Mind Body Beauty, but what can I say? Marketing, we love the cheesy names and the work. So yeah, that's kind of the high level of how it was put together, and the transformation involved.
We love cheesy names. We love it. To All the Men I've Tolerated Before is a name that just smacks people in the face. So we need
Oh, that's powerful.
I love what you said about relearning your body's cues, because in my 30s, after about 4 to 5 years with my therapist, I had to look her in the face one session and be like, hey, you know how we all thought it was just like my parents and narcissistic men that I've dated and all the other things that have hurt me? Well, it turns out I also like to hurt myself with food. Would you like to know about those patterns? And she was like, yes, we can talk about your disordered eating if you have disordered eating. And I'm like, cool. Because whenever I would reach out to like maybe a trusted person or whatever, and it was like, I just don't feel like the way I eat is quote unquote right, or like you
Mm.
said, normal, or any of it. And my relationship with food doesn't feel loving. And people would be like, everyone has disordered eating. Like, just welcome to the club. That's how we survive in this society now.
Yeah. And you know what? I would agree with both. Like, yes, I was going to say, I think a lot of women are. I think we're all on this spectrum. And that's not to say, okay, so therefore we don't have to heal it. For sure, there's a way out of it. But I would definitely agree with that. It's so brave of you to actually just say, yeah, I had disordered eating and I struggled with it, because so many women that I work with, especially at the beginning, they're like, oh, like, no, like, yes, I want to lose weight. Yes, I want to stop thinking about food all the time. Yes, I want to do all those things. And you drop the word disordered eating, and they're like, oh, no, 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 that's not me. And so we don't want to attach to that, but it's like, we've got to feel it to heal it, and we can move on. That's not your identity.
Well, and part of the reason I had to come to terms with being like, no, you don't just have like weird stomach issues at night and then you logically take care of them by purging so you can go back to sleep. It's disordered eating. Because on the podcast, we talk all the time about we can't heal these systematical problems in our world if we're not calling them what they are.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to be like, oh, boys will be boys. And it's like, no, your buddy was drugging women. That's what was happening. And then people are like, whoa, 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 that's my friend. Yeah, your friend who was drugging women.
I love that you say it in those terms, because actually that really summarizes how I work with clients in terms of literally just calling them and allowing them to call themselves on their bullshit, right? And it's really about digging up these I call them non-value based beliefs that are operating in the gut. And really just seeing them for what they are. And once you pull them out, you can just see it and be like, oh, I don't want to live by that belief. So, for example, for me, it was, oh, well, I can eat fruit and it's not real food because it's fruit and it's healthy. And so I can just eat pounds and pounds of it and not even consider myself eating right now. It doesn't matter that, like, this is my seventh watermelon of the evening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, no, like, watermelon is still food. Just because it's healthy or organic doesn't mean that, I can put as much as I want into my body. And so, that's a very specific one, but for some, it's like, oh, as long as I eat within, if they're intermittent fasting, like, oh, well, as long as I'm eating between 12 and 7, then like I'm being healthy. Or, well, as long as I'm not eating gluten, then, it's fine. Or as long as I am eating this, then it's fine. And it's sort of like pulling out these beliefs and being like, okay, well, is that something that you want to run the show? Or, maybe we picked up habits around our family when we were growing up around, I know for me, I was in a Greek household, and it was always like, eat as much as you can, as quickly as you can, because that's just like what we do here. And so it was like, it was calm. It was catching that I'm like, oh my God, I'm rushing. And there's no need to rush right now. Like, I'm an adult who's living in their own house. I don't have anything scheduled for the rest of the evening. And here I am, like, piling this food into me as if there's like a timer. And you have to just catch it and be like, oh, I'm rushing. And, as you say, you just pull it out, catch it for what it is, and then make a choice to be like, and I don't need to. And,
Hmm.
and then bring a mantra like, I have all the time I need to eat.
And during our little pre chat, we were talking about how in our society, it's so easy to fall into like scheduled eating. It's like at school, I was just talking about it yesterday on our live about Remember the Titans, because we were talking about schools and how schools either help kids or fail kids when it comes to like social and emotional skills and being friends with one another and whatever. And free and reduced lunch got brought up and portion sizes at school. And I was like, oh, also, students at most have like 12 minutes to not only socialize with their friends and like get to know one another, but also eat. So if you're a chatty kid like I am, I could eat a 3-hour meal because it's like I'm just chatting with people and I've forgotten that there's food in front of me. And then if you're that kid at school, then the teacher's screaming 3 minutes left to lunch and you're shoveling food in yourself. And that's also not satisfying you.
Yeah. Whether it's rushing or even just the idea, I'm going to go out there and say that we shouldn't even call it lunch, because it should really, Ideally, I would love, in the schooling system, for there to be a way, and I don't know the perfect way that this could be come to be, but if there was a way that we could just simply eat when we were hungry, and it not have to be this timed interval occasion where it's like, oh, it's lunchtime, so eat. Instead, it's really like using verbiage with my clients that have children, where it's like, okay, well, is there room in your stomach right now? Do you feel hungry? These are questions that we need to ask, whether it's for our children or ourselves, versus, oh, well, it's this time, so I should. And again, the rushing, I think school teaches that for women that have ever worked in like a restaurant environment. I always get, whether it's a waitress or whatever, they always share that those circumstances where it's like, well, I've been on my feet for 8 hours. I have like zero point 0.4 minutes to do, just like stand here at the back and shove whatever I can in my mouth. So I'm going to do it. And, I'm not here to say like, oh no, you need to like go sit down and light a candle and like play some Etta James and like, you know what I mean? Make it a ritual, because sometimes that's just not the case. But we do need to prioritize ultimately our self-care in a way that's not just like trendy self-care, in a way that it's like, okay, well, if you're hungry, then do you actually have the possibility of caring for your physical body and therefore eating? And if that answer is no, then you really do have to look at your life and be like, okay, well, do I want to live my life like this, where I literally can't care for my physical needs in the moment?
And then that's a whole mindset shift in how we manage people and manage jobs and what we're doing as leaders in industry, to be like, you know what? Who cares if it's noon? If you're a person who doesn't get hungry until 3 p.m., then that's when you can eat, or go home for the day at 3 p.m.
Exactly, exactly. It's and while there's definitely big shifts that need to be made, I also want to kind of play devil's advocate to myself, in the way of saying that oftentimes we think that it's a huge deal if we either eat or don't eat because of some, circumstance. And oftentimes no one cares as much as we think they do. I mean, whether it's you're going to someone's house and maybe you're not hungry and you didn't know that they'd be offering you food, and then now they're offering you food and you're, oh my god, like it would be so horrible if I didn't. Like, oh, it might be awkward for a couple moments, but like eventually they're going to get over it. And then same thing goes for the other side. If you are out with a friend and you've been out, for a long time, and you're getting hungry and you're like, oh my goodness, oh, this, it's like, I don't think it's going to break the friendship if you say, you know what, like I'm really quite hungry, like do you think that we can, stop and eat something? And so it really is about, it comes back down to, even though it's like so cliche and so overused, but worthiness, right? It's like, okay, I am worthy of either eating or not eating. And that decision, whether it's eating or whether it's not eating, it's coming from a place of, just self-respect, not even self-love, just self-respect.
And I think we've all had that instance where like setting the boundary didn't go the way that we wanted. I was talking to a friend. It's because we're reading this book called Night Bitch, which is about a woman who is raising her toddler 2-year-old basically on her own for most of the week because her husband travels Monday through Friday for work. And then he comes home for the weekends and he has a lot of opinions like, oh, you didn't think to get milk? Oh, that's what you've been eating for dinner all week? All this and the other. And because she slowly believes that she's also turning into a werewolf, my first text message was, I hope she eats the husband. And my friend was like, oh, okay. I was like, no, I'm like 4 pages in. And I'm like, eat that dude. And then be like, I'm a werewolf. I don't know. And so we were talking about, the opinions of our outside sources. And I was like, one day I was hanging out with a friend at her house for the afternoon, and then I was meeting up with the guy that I was seeing, and I was like, and I knew he was cooking dinner, but because we were like, ooh, let's treat ourselves. We had sushi lunch, and like we went sushi lunch hard because we love sushi. So by the time I got to his house, I'm just kind of like, I was like, oh no, don't give me a full portion, and I'm like, I just want to try it or whatever. And the amount of like, what do you mean you just want to try it? You know that I cook dinner around this time and eat in front of me. Like, And well, I made sure to not put onions in it because you don't like it. Also, didn't ask you to do that. Like, just the amount of pressure that people will put you under once they feel like shirked by you. And it's this weird like rejection dynamic.
Totally. And I think that in those sorts of circumstances, what's been most helpful for myself is to realize that if they're being super judgy, like they have their own food issues. Because ultimately, if they were so secure with their own eating and relationship to food, then you saying that, oh, actually, you know what, like I had a big lunch, sorry, I'm not gonna, partake in this, then it wouldn't be a big deal, right? But obviously, he might have had some weird attachments to like, oh, like you have to eat dinner or, you're not a good person. Like something was operating in his brain that might have been a little bit, and so you just kind of have to remove yourself from like, okay, well, then that's their journey. But ultimately, no one else has to feel the feeling in my stomach. No one else knows, what's in there or what's not. And so I'm the only person responsible for making those decisions. And yeah, I mean, I get it to an even more intense degree whenever I go to Greece. I'm half Greek, and like the if you just go to someone's house and not eat, it's like there's like what's wrong? Do you know what I mean? Like there's like issue here. And I remember staying at someone's house, and I came downstairs right from it was like 8 a.m. and he was like, oh, like making eggs, whatever. And I was like, he was like, oh, you're gonna eat now. This is literally the first thing he said to me. You're gonna eat now. And I was like, oh, no, like I'm not hungry. And I was so proud of myself because in any other time I would have tried to just make this other like excuse. But I was like, no, I'm just going to say it how it is. Like there's no room in my stomach. And I think we need to be comfortable with, setting our own boundaries.
Well, and I think we've also done this really great way of like demonizing picky eaters. And it's like, well, picky eaters are just people that have preferences. Like, and
Yeah.
they're usually pretty accommodative, like things that you can accommodate while you're cooking, or they're not. And then it's on that person with preference to also provide themselves a meal or pre eat for the party or any of those things. And it'll all work out. I remember just being like out at like theme parks or whatever, and I'm a car sick kid. So part of me was like, well, if I make sure to like eat right or drink the right things or whatever, I won't get car sick. Like it's just this like silly rule I made up in my head. So getting people to like stop having fun to be like, I need to eat a rice bowl so I am not car sick on the roller coaster. And then people are like, so we have to stop riding roller coasters because you're hungry. And I'm like, no, I'm just stopping because I'm hungry. And
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. And just kind of, setting yourself up for, success. And ultimately, like, if they were real friends, it wouldn't really matter. And I love what you say about taste preferences. I think they're the best thing ever. If you just like everything, there's something actually that's to me is signaling there's some sort of disordered eating, because ultimately we have taste preferences for a reason, and that means that we like certain things and that also we dislike certain things. And whenever my clients say they have certain taste preferences, I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing, because oftentimes we get into such kind of disordered eating spirals that we lose our taste preferences because we give them up to diet culture. And it's
mhm.
like, oh no, like I love these like crackers that taste like cardboard, and like, no, I don't like chocolate with refined sugar. Like, oh no, like you know. And it's like, really? Are those your taste preferences, or are those what you've tried to kind of head down and manufacture for yourself? And so, I always tell clients to embrace their taste preferences and know that they will or may change and evolve as they change and evolve. And it's so beautiful. For me, I've never really had major like, oh, I don't like this. And so whenever I see people that are sort of like will leave things on their plate or be like, oh no, I don't like that, I always really admire that, because I'm like, wow, how wonderful that they were fully respecting their taste preferences and their taste buds, and they weren't eating it just because, oh, it's food, or they really are, carrying themselves at such a high level of, oh no, like I don't eat this because I don't like it.
Yeah.
And that is something that's beautiful.
During my childhood, I remember being undervalued a lot when it came to food, where it's like you would set a preference and then it would like directly harm someone else's preference. So you were then told, like, oh, like you won't even notice that the onions are on the pizza. And it's like, yes, I will, because I don't like them.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. And like, and how has that affected you as it relates to like how when you cook for yourself now?
Well, number one, I don't cook for myself very often. I say that it's crock pot season. So now I'm like, yeah, I can do it. I can put things into a pot and then leave it for 8 hours. And that's really great for my attention. But it's just one of those things where I like being in complete control of whatever it is my meal is going to be. So when it does come to like parties and you feel like you've been jilted by that party before, where it's like, well, I got there and then I didn't like any of the food, or there wasn't like enough food for everybody or anything, I'm just going to eat ahead of time. Like it's now almost like I'm strategic about like, well, how do I make sure that I don't go into a hangry rage because I don't like anything that's presented to me.
Yep. And I think that's a totally fair strategy. I mean, realistically, I always say that, if you have, let's say, a dinner plan for, 5 p.m. with your friends, whatever. I eat early, so I'm using 5 p.m. Most normal people, they're like 8 p.m. is the normal time people go out. But okay, I'm boring. I like go out at 5 p.m. so I can be in bed by 8. But anyways, and so, I think that the in order thing to do is if you want to partake in that event, then you do arrive hungry and you sort of take the steps so that you can get there and you're hungry. Now, with that said, if you are going to an event where it's like I have no clue what the food is going to be, or I have an inclination that the food is not going to be what I want, then what's the best thing to do to take care of yourself? Well, you know what, I don't want to be starving while I'm there and not be able to really be present, so I'm going to have maybe a small snack beforehand so I can be balanced. And maybe if there is something that I like that's there, I can have a little bit of room in my stomach so that I can enjoy it. Or, also I'll be fine and not, super hungry if there isn't, right? And so kind of like making it just being kind to yourself and really about, like what would you tell a friend to do? You wouldn't say like, well, suck it up, right? You would say like, well, what about this? And so that's what we have to be with ourselves.
And I think this also came up yesterday during our Remember the Titans live on YouTube, but it's one of those things where I feel like women just fall into the default category of like, well, we will deny ourselves the things that we want. So, like, the boat is not rocked. So, we have calm waters. If the kids want chicken nuggets, I guess we're eating chicken nuggets. Like, I'm not making 18 things. So, I guess it's pancakes because that's what everyone likes. But if I have to eat another pancake, I'm throwing it at the wall. And and like, you feel that, like, when you're a kid and you're just watching, like, women in the home just be like, no, I get, like, my favorite meal is spaghetti, but no one's gonna eat that, so I guess it's mac and cheese again. And yesterday we were talking about the scene in Remember the Titans where the white team with Coach Yost, they just like ambush a practice meeting because they're like, we're white men and we never should ever have to compete for anything ever, we should just get it. And then they just like stare down Denzel Washington. And I was talking about how that like attitude still exists today, that there is a large part of our male population who literally does not feel like they should ever have to prove that they're better at anything in order to actually get the job or the position on the team or whatever. And I go, and I love when guys tell me, like, well, I'm not that guy. I'm not like that. And I'm like, really? Because every time I tell you that I don't want to go to Chili's for dinner, I've all of a sudden like hurt your soul. And it's like, but that's what I wanted.
Yes. Oh my God. You know what? I love that perspective because I've never thought about it in that way. But I don't know how I haven't because I've worked with so many women that are either mothers, but definitely even those that don't have children, but they have a partner. And there's this automatic, just like this innate knowing of like, well, obviously we have to cater to his needs
Mm-hmm.
first.
Yeah.
Even though I'm the one that is going to be cooking it and grocery shopping and all of those things, but I'm not going to consider what it is that I'd like to eat. Like maybe if there's extra time, like I can perhaps ponder the thought. But and it's like, well, what about if you went into it with like, well, what would I like for dinner? And make it. And if he complains, then it's like, oh, okay, well, how can I adjust this so that you can also enjoy it too, right? And the funny thing is oftentimes they don't like sometimes they do. Sometimes like we as women sort of assume that there's going to be this that they have these certain preferences or
Hmm.
whatever. We just kind of cater to them and automatically put ourselves second without even considering that we don't even need to do that, right? And so I love that you said like, well, I don't want to go to Chili's. And instead it's just like, well, I'd like to do, oftentimes clients will be like, well, actually, I actually like vegetables, but my husband doesn't. So neither of us eat
Right.
vegetables. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, if you want vegetables, like you can make them and he can not eat them. And he'll find something
You're
else. Like,
denying yourself a whole food group
and totally.
for one person's opinion.
Totally. And I mean, I've always been a fairly selfish person around food and in
Yeah.
relationships, which I'm very happy to announce. And so whenever, like, I mean, I was just in a relationship with a Mexican man who literally just ate like beige and corn. Like if it wasn't beige or corn based, like it wasn't going in his mouth. And I didn't feel like I was ever deprived
Yeah.
in that relationship because I always just ate what tasted good to me. And sometimes it was beige and sometimes it was corn and sometimes it wasn't.
There's also, because we make fun of women a lot of the time where it's like, well, they never know what they want to eat for dinner. Like you ask and it's like, yeah, do you know the mental gymnastics we have to go through to see if you're actually asking us a question to be kind, or you're just asking us to set up whether or not we know what you want for dinner?
And first of all, we should not know what we want for dinner too in advance because who does? Like, do I know what I want for dinner tomorrow? No. Should I be questioning what I want for dinner tomorrow? No. Of course, we live in a practical world. Like we need to go grocery shopping. Like a lot of us are lucky that like we live super close. So even like I go grocery shopping every couple days,
Hmm.
but also some of us are need to be a little bit more practical and it's like the weekly shop, whatever. So yes, there should be some practicality and planning involved, but there should also be flexibility. And so one, you don't feel like you need to like pre-plan everything. And yeah, I love that you're addressing that it's for a lot of the times for women, it's not simply what do I feel like, what would taste good to me. It's oh well, what should I be eating?
Hmm.
And there's just all of this head chatter based on all of the diet culture that we've been conditioned with, that we can't just simply answer that question. It's this, as you say, this mental maze of like, well, then we've lost that ability to just be like, what do I feel like?
And eventually, within like my teen years, overeating became my way to like tell people, well, fuck you for making a comment. I remember being at my sister's graduation party and I was eating graduation cake because that's the only reason we have graduation parties, to have a summer of frosting. The end. I don't, why else have the barbecue? You're eating pulled pork all summer and frosting, and that's it, with like various sides depending on whose auntie is coming. And I was eating my cake, and my grandmother leaned over and like whispered in my ear. And if it was my sister's graduation party, I was a freshman in college. She whispered in my ear, "That's so fattening." And I looked at my cousin, who was not this woman's grandchild or whatever. I looked at my cousin Jacob and I went, "Go get me fucking another piece of cake and make sure it's the biggest fucking piece of cake you've ever seen." And he's like, "All right, we're being petty today."
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And you make a great example of just like, how can we possibly just follow our instincts when we have all of this, chatter going on? I was at a wedding the other week and I remember I was diving into this, like I had never have it before, but it was this like Cretan rice situation. And apparently it was like, I don't know. It sounded really gross, but it tasted really good. It was like cooked in goat fat or something.
Ooh.
But it was delicious. Okay. I was like, "Oh, it's like cream." And they're like, "No, that's just like the fat." And I was like, "Okay." And I was just eating it and I was enjoying it. I was like, "This is delicious." And there was a woman sitting next to me and she was like, "Oh, that'll go straight to your hips." And I just like looked at her like, "Oh my God, that's so sad that that's your relationship with food is like, what it's doing to your body or how bad it is." Because we don't have to live by these rules if we simply live by, again, hunger and taste. That's the only thing. It's like, okay, I was hungry, and two, it tasted good to me. That's all I needed to check in with. I didn't need to check in with if it's, trendy or fattening or not fattening. Or I don't think we just get overwhelmed with all of the information and all of the comments.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I almost like, I'm at the point where if someone wants to tell me that the food I'm eating is fattening or is going to go straight to my hips, I thought that that was like a phrase that we took out in like 1998. But cool, I guess we're still saying it. I would have been all like, I would have just like felt the need to like look at that woman because sometimes I am petty and feel ballsy and be like, well, thank God, have you seen Megan Trainor? How about Megan the Stallion, man? She got them stallion hips. That's what I want.
Right? I'll take a second dish then. Yeah.
Please let me get fetishized just like J-Lo. That'd be great. I need that Kardashian money. Like,
Right?
come on. Except for the Kardashians are on this whole new spiral where they have done nothing but like appropriate like African American culture, bodies, and skin tones. And now all of a sudden they're the whitest, skinniest ladies I've ever seen. And I'm like,
Right? That happened really quickly.
really
I know.
quickly.
It was like one day they were like, the inspo of like, "Oh my God, see, like you can be curvy and like be the sexiest thing alive." And then like literally the next day I was like, "Wait, why is everyone so skinny now?"
Right. And that's why Lizzo's my only true hero. Like, the end. It's just Lizzo. But I famously, and I get made fun of it every time someone comes over, I have a beautiful pottery bowl that someone gifted me. And it's the perfect size for the amount of seasonal candy that I always want in this home.
Aw.
And I love seasonal candy. I love color coordinating things. I love when something is a theme. I could never have candy in this room or in this house ever, but like if the M&Ms are pink for Valentine's Day, I'm like, "Oh, I need pink M&Ms. Those are better." They're better. They're pink. And so I always have my seasonal candy dish out. And then I read in a book or on a meme that someone grew up in a home where candy was not allowed. Like you were allowed candy, like 3 pieces on Halloween, and then they tossed your Halloween candy or whatever. And then they would go to their friend's house. And so they always thought about candy and like, how do I steal candy from the grocery store? How do I get candy for my friends? How do I like sneak candy at school or whatever? You become hyper focused on this thing that you're denying yourself. And then they went to their friend's house whose mom just had, you know what? It was the Self Helpless podcast. I think this was Kelsey. I'm like, where did I hear this? And then you go to your friend's house and they just have candy out. And like, no one's monitoring you. No one's being like, how many Snickers did you have today? No one's being like, ooh, I'm being bad today. Look at me and my Twix. People are just, it's just there. And and she goes, I don't think I ever saw my friend ever touch that bowl of candy. Or if they did, it was literally because they wanted a Snickers.
Right? Oh, I can totally relate with that story. And you know what? We can use that as an example for how we can live today, right? It's like if you knew that you could always have whatever it is that you wanted with zero judgment, with zero shame, all these things, then guess what? You would just eat what you wanted and nothing more, right? No more, no less, right? Whenever we're overdoing it, it's because we were in a state of deprivation. And for some women that I say this, they're like, "Oh no, trust me, I don't deprive myself. Like if anything, I need to deprive myself." Right? They're almost like ashamed that they're not in deprivation. Like that's the world that we live in now. That like women feel bad that they're not starving themselves. They're like, "Oh Kiki, no, like trust me, I don't even deprive myself." It's like this like guilty, like I'm like, I'm like, it's okay. But they are. They're doing it in their heads though. They might not be, going on a 12-hour fast or whatever it is, but deep down in their heads, they're like, I shouldn't be eating this. And guess what? That's the exact same. It's still deprivation. And when you're telling yourself that it's off limits or even that now it's like there's this whole thing around, oh, it's in moderation, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this thing of like, oh well, if I can have 2 bites of this and then it's fine. It's like you're still in deprivation. There's no need to kind of like head your way into this. Like you don't have to to think your way into it or out of it. It should be a visceral sensation, and it's always, well, is one more bite going to add abundance in my body? Is this going to add pleasure, or is this going to add heaviness? And at the beginning, when we start eating, it's like food, it adds pleasure, it adds abundance of pleasure in the body. And eventually we get to that point where it's like, you know what, another bite is actually going to start taking away from abundance of my body, because I'm going to start to feel crowded in my stomach, and I'm not going to feel as free and flowy. So I'm going to stop, not because of portion control, not because of, oh, well, it's not my cheat day yet. It's because I want to feel good. And it's the same situation with the kids that always have it available. It's like, yeah, it's never off limits. So guess what? They eat it when they feel like it, when they're hungry, and then they know that they can stop eating at any time because it's still going to be there. And that often is really difficult if you've told yourself, oh, well, I'm never going to have this again, or, oh, well, it's just because it's the weekend. Guess what? You're going to eat more because you know that this isn't always going to be available to you. And I always say rules of eating always lead to overeating. And so you might as well just drop the rules.
Yeah. The best thing that I ever started doing to just make myself calm down was keep cookie dough in my refrigerator, because I'm like, you can make, like, the day that I learned that you could have a tub of cookie dough in your like refrigerator for 2 weeks, and if that meant that you made 2 cookies at a time, that it was perfectly like logical to make 2 cookies at a time because you are one person in your home who wants 2 cookies.
Fair. Totally fair, right?
Because you think about making cookies, you're like, I don't know what to do with a dozen cookies, but I'm like, well, if I just buy pre-made dough instead of trying to like did get down to my grandma Peg roots where it's like, get out the mixer and the cups and all of it and let's make a dozen cookies, then it's just something like, oh, I could go for a cookie. And then I completely go off of the craving.
Yep, totally. I love that. And that's actually such a good versatile tip. I've never thought about the pre-made dough situation. And even if you did want to go the homemade route, but then just pre-make it and then just freeze them. That's such a good idea.
I am the queen of pre-made options because by the time you are supposed to be cooking in your life, I have done so many things in my brain and with my hands that usually I come up for air around 8:30 p.m. and I'm like, well, who the fuck is going to cook now? It's not going to be me. I'm a queen at pre-made options. Thank you, Dorothy Lane Market, for having a wide spread of things that are just like, we made you a brisket and you can just heat it up. Thank God.
Yeah, and you're planning ahead and you're planning with where you're at, right? I think so many women overcomplicate it. It's like, oh, well, then I get home at this time and then blah, blah. It's like eating isn't that complicated. Like you could have something, again, pre-made, or you could pick something up. But there's so much wrapped up in like our value based on what it is and when we're having and all of that. But when we really start to unlayer that and just kind of like, it's food, like eat something when you're hungry, it becomes as simple as it always was meant to be.
Yeah. And I think it's also the language that we use and the value that we put on labor. Like, it's not just enough to be like, I had a bagel for dinner because I knew I was getting hungry, but it was also late. So I had a bagel. It's like, oh my gosh, you didn't spend like 45 minutes in the kitchen, like curating a taste profile for yourself and like making sure that your plate was the color of the rainbow and you had, a vegetable, a fruit, and all of this. Like, we even talk about it in terms of labor. Like, I slaved away in the kitchen all day. I worked for days planning this Thanksgiving meal because Thanksgiving's coming up next week. And all I want to eat is my Aunt Jen's wild rice. I don't even know if she's making it. She made it one time last year at Thanksgiving. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever had. I don't even like Thanksgiving dinner.
God bless the aunt that makes the wild rice dish.
Oh my gosh. I might text her to be, I'm like, are you making that rice dish?
Probably give her like a heads up.
I'm driving 6 hours. Are you making that rice dish? Yes or no?
The flippin' rice dish.
Right. I came to your house because mom's dinner was going to be trash and very like light. And I was like, no, I need a heavy, like,
I need something heartier.
aunt meal. That's what I need to be driving for.
But in the bagel example, I love that because you use the words around, there's so much judgment around, oh, well, like, is it bright or this? And it's another example of when there's rules of eating, we often overeat, right? Instead of just, you were able to just have the bagel, right? And then move on with your life. Imagine if you were living under the conditioning that it's, oh, but I have to have vegetables, but I have to have this, but I have to make sure I get protein. Oh, but what about this, right? And we end up, having this, calculation in our heads that then we end up either overeating or eating something that we don't actually want. And there's so much around, like, you can go a day without eating vegetables and still be a healthy, happy, functioning human, right? It doesn't always have to be this, these perfect, like, I like to look at balance over a week or a month. Like, it's not a day.
Yeah, when I was working a job that I hated and therefore I could not be around for lunch, like I had to like physically remove myself for that hour. It was very easy to grab fast food and then sit in a Walmart parking lot eating said fast food while I was on the phone with a friend or listening to a podcast or something. And I had that job for about a year. And I just remember, like, because we've talked about it, like, when your mind and your emotions aren't right, you're not doing a lot of the things that help you take care of yourself. So I remember texting my sister. I was like, do you know that if you eat carrots, it actually changes, like, your whole body dynamic? I go, I've never felt better. And she goes, well, what have you been eating? And I'm like, French fries. That's what I've been eating. And I'm like, it's a vegetable. It's a potato. I go, but if you eat a carrot, man, life changer. And it's that whole thing of like when we deprive our body of even like the things that we know are quote unquote good foods and you have it for the first time. I went on a huge like, why would I drink water kick this summer? After years of training myself to enjoy water, I was like, why though? That
Yeah.
almost feels like I love myself. And then I was like, have you guys ever? And I remember we were on a live show and my co host was like, basically, like, why would you be denying yourself water? And I was like, you know what? Couldn't tell you, but I've just not drank water in weeks. But now I can't stop. So you're going to have to talk about the show we're talking about today.
Yeah, and you know what, the water thing, it just goes to show that, like, we naturally crave the things that we need. It's not that we're natural, like, I think everyone has this because of how we're spoken to, in diet culture. It's like we all feel like, "Oh my god, if we just, like, listen to our body's needs, like, we're all just gonna eat, like, Oreos for the rest of our lives." It's like, no, like, yeah, you might want some Oreos sometimes, and you'll eat them, and then again, like, eventually your body will be like, hey, I'd like some broccoli, or like, I'd like a carrot, or like maybe a glass of water here and there, right? Like, our bodies know, and our bodies are not here to fight us. They want to be healthy and be happy, and it's whether you're coming at it from like, oh, like, I'm really really trying to be healthy, that will never work either, because again, you're pushing it, and you can't, I always say, you can't want a should. So as soon as it's like, I should be eating broccoli, guess what? You're not going to like enjoy it
Right.
as much as if you just allowed yourself to wait for eventually one day you might like broccoli. And maybe that day won't come, and that's fine, because there'll be some other like quote unquote healthy thing that you'll eventually be gravitated towards, you know?
Yeah. It'll all work out if we just start listening to our bodies. I feel like we have also just bred this society where we refuse to have a relationship with our bodies anymore because it's like, who has time to think about what I would like or what my body would need or what would make like my kidneys stop hurting if I drink water? Like who has the time? I have to work. I got to get these kids to soccer. I've got to like get the cat to the vet and make sure that my husband's happy. Like, no, I don't have time.
There's a beautiful quote. I think it's from, what do you say, like the Buddha, a Buddhist of the like I think you just say the like one up the.
I think I refer to him as the Buddha, but it's but only after I read Siddhartha and then I realized that you because like as a I was raised Catholic and then went, oh no, thank you to that. And then I learned more about Buddhist and Hinduism and the middle way. And I was like, no, that's what I gravitate towards. So then
Yeah.
once I realized that you're not allowed to like commoditize the like Buddha and actually buy like Buddha paraphernalia, I was like, damn it, I thought I was doing a nice thing for myself and for the Buddha.
Well, the Buddha, there's a quote, and I'm gonna totally butcher it, but basically it's saying that, man is the silliest or like kind of craziest creature, because and by man, he obviously means men and women.
All of us.
People, all of us. Essentially, it's like he's sort of poking fun at that we trade our health for money to then just get back to then trade our money back for our health, right? And so it's like if we're on this quest for like, oh no, because I don't have time, because usually it comes down to like, because I need to make money for like me or my kids or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, but eventually that day will come where you're like, okay, here's all my money, get me healthy again. So instead of doing that exchange, why don't you just prioritize health? And I'm not saying, oh, let's all quit our jobs and just,
I
eat.
usually am saying let's all quit our jobs. That's
Well,
usually.
I mean, I am too, but like maybe not tomorrow. Like put up a 30-day plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was at book club on Sunday. I had not read any of the 3 books that I was supposed to be reading because I was reading Night Bitch to talk to my friend Sam about it at book club. And I overheard someone who they're reading this book. It's about humanity and the ebbs and flows of humanity and like the patterns that we see within humanity or whatever. And someone handed it to me. I tried to read the book jacket. I even remember going, that could probably be one that I could listen to, but not comprehending anything I had just read or looked at. And so I overheard them talking about it, and they were like, yeah. And then they eventually said that we will get to the point where technology does so many of our jobs that there will be more people than jobs. And then what do we do? And I looked at my friend Sam. I was like, did you just hear that? I was like, isn't that the fucking goal? I go, we're not making robots so I don't have to work. I was like, why won't people make that the goal?
Right? Oh my God. I agree with your perspective. Yeah.
Like, why? Why would I work if the computer will do it? I don't know.
I know, right? It's like, aren't we chasing the wrong thing? Like, why are we like worried that we're becoming more efficient? Like, yeah, okay, now you can go live your life. Like now you can go take 5 minutes to stare at like out of a window and
Mm-hmm.
be, you know?
A friend who works in HR, she told me, she goes, we tell non-smokers to still to still take smoke breaks because we found that the people who take smoke breaks are actually the people who are like breathing deeply and calming themselves down for those 10 minutes. So we're like, take a non-smoking smoke break and just go outside and breathe for 10 minutes.
Totally. I'm a huge believer in just doing like the simplest things because I'm always, telling my clients like, oh, just, like take some time, take a breath. And they're kind of, what is it? Like they get out their notebook, like, what is it that I should be doing? Right. They want to like do a meditation or
Yeah.
like do something more. And it's like sometimes it's like it's doing nothing.
Yeah.
It's sitting there and doing nothing. Like twiddle your thumbs. Like that's it's called being a human. We can like take a break to do nothing. Like we don't have to go on social. We don't have to eat. We don't have to fill all of the space in our life. We can just exist. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
No, I'm a Capricorn. There's no one who tried to put like rules onto meditation and just like completely destroy the point like I can, where I'm like, I have to draw a oracle card and then I have to journal about the oracle card. And wasn't
Get
this
out
so
the space.
relaxing? All of the homework I gave myself. I have to write I have to light the right candle and I can only meditate between the hours of 5 to 6. Like I have all of these silly rules like the day ends at 3 p.m. and I'm like, "Oh my gosh. I can't do yoga now. It's 4:30."
There's no time.
No. I'm unwell is what I am in my brain where I'm just like, who told me this rule that you can't do yoga past 6 p.m.? Like when did that become a rule in my head? When?
To be honest, I go to bed at like 8 p.m. So I'm not doing much past 6.
My favorite is to fall asleep because I'm a night owl, but my favorite thing to do is to be like, I could probably make it another hour for another episode of this show and then just like take my pre-sleep on the couch and then be like, oh, that was nice. A 2-hour pre-sleep on the couch when you could have just walked yourself up to bed, but then you might have to wash your face and that sounded hard.
You took an appetizer.
I did. A nappetizer. I had to like also rebuild my relationship with napping because I think it's because people are like, a 25-minute nap is the only nap you need. It's the perfect time to refresh your brain without getting yourself tired again. And I'm like, cool, I can't do that. If I'm falling asleep, it's for 3 hours. So if you tell me 3 o'clock's a great time for a nap, cool, I'm sleeping till 6.
And I love that you're just listening to your body, because it's another example of just how we're like, oh no, like a nap equals 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And then we just all accept that as the truth. Just like we all accepted, like, oh no, low fat is the way. And now we're like, no, 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 high fat is the way, low carb is the way. And we just kind of operate sometimes as sheep, and we're just, oh, okay,
Oh,
this
okay,
is the way,
whatever you
rather
say.
than checking in with our bodies and being like, you know what, 20-minute nap, not happening. Like 3 hours is the way I roll. Right? And so, yeah.
Yeah, once I was able to create my own work schedule to where it's like, I watched this TikTok one time. I'm always on TikTok. And this woman was like,
I need to follow you on TikTok because I still haven't figured it out. Have you figured out TikTok?
I mean,
I
have
feel
I? I get like maybe 200 views
okay, you figured it
consistently.
out. You figured it out just as much as I have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Where it's like, TikTok, why? Why won't you love me?
Right? I'm like, what? Why haven't you brought people to me?
And they're always like, because you're trying to get people onto Apple Podcasts. And I'm like, I am TikTok, but you won't let me talk for more than 3 minutes. Like, you won't. That's on you. Um, so I was on TikTok, and this woman who was like a historian or just some lady on the internet that I decided was wise, I believe she had a Victorian nightgown on. She was like, do you know that in the Victorian era, they slept multiple times during the day? So, like, you would like sleep from like midnight to the morning, wake up, maybe eat some breakfast, do a couple of things in your Victorian lifestyle, and then sleep again from like 4 to 7, and then again wake up, be up for several hours. And they did like block scheduling for sleeping. And I'm like, that's what my body likes, like the block schedule.
Oh my God, you don't even have to go back in time. You can move to Greece. That's
Oh,
how it works
please
there.
let me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Literally, I was so confused because they would be like, yeah, okay, like dinner, like see you at 11. I was like, wait, how does that make sense? And then I understand it's because we all go to sleep at like 3 or 4, take several hours. It's not they're not doing 20-minute like siestas.
Mm-mm.
It's a full on. They are like deep snoring, sleeping situation. Then yeah, they wake up at like 7 or 8, get ready to then go far into the night and then do it all over again. I liked it because you almost got like a double day in one.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're doing block scheduling. That's what we did in high school to get more time for learning or whatever. Um, no, I have already sold myself that my sea hack years will be spent on a rocky cliff in Greece, overlooking the Mediterranean. I want to be Meryl Streep and Mamma Mia too.
Don't we all?
As well. In the overalls and everything. Every time I'm out at a thrift store, I'm like, where's my Donna pair of overalls? I deserve them.
My God, I love that.
But yeah. Also, many people always ask me, Natalie, why aren't you Greek? And I go, because I'm Croatian, and that's why you're confused.
Okay, yes, I even make that mistake. Also, Croatia is probably similar. I went there and it's super beautiful. I couldn't tell any of my Greek family because it like I was so like just in awe of the beauty there. And I remember I told once like my aunt, like right when I came back, it was like, oh my God, like Croatia's beautiful. And she just gave me this look like, don't bring that into my house. Greek is the only good place, the only good culture. Like, let's not get confused now, Kiki.
That's so funny because my mom and I, because it's on my mom's side of the family that I'm Croatian. My mom and I went and saw My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and then we like kind of laughed, but then we were like, everything that's happened in this movie has happened to our family.
Literally, yes, I agree.
Yeah, when did they follow my family around?
Right.
And my mom was like, it wasn't like Windex so that he would spray on everything. It was like Clorox or something. I'm like, yeah,
I
it
was
was
gonna
like,
say everyone has their own. Like for us, it was vinegar, white
uh,
vinegar for anything,
see,
including or rubbing alcohol. It
yeah,
was one of those
you
things.
just spritz it. Like, oh, you got,
Yeah.
you got a rash, and we'll just
Oh,
spritz that.
totally. Any sickness, like from a flu to like, menstrual cramps, rubbing
Yeah.
alcohol. Like, I don't really understand how that's a
My mom
thing.
was big on the Tums. Like, oh, are you
Oh,
feeling icky today? Have a Tums. What?
oh, totally. Oh, yeah. My mom's went through that too. I think it's just like a boomer
Yeah.
generation thing. They thought that like Tums could fix everything.
The man I had lunch with today, he was a coworker, and I remember I was like, my sinuses are starting to act up and my head is so cloudy. I really need to get Sprite on the way home. And he's like, walk me through that logic. I was like, your mom didn't believe in 6 Sprite? I was like, 6 Sprite cures whatever is ailing you. Sour stomach, Sprite. I go, the carbonation breaks up your sinus problems. And he goes, it does not. That's not science.
Wow. Yeah, I never heard of the Sprite thing. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you're taking ginger ale to a whole new level.
Yeah. I think it's because we didn't like, I don't think my mom liked ginger ale. So she's like, Sprite, when you're sick, come on.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Just without the ginger, which was, I think, the whole point.
True. I believe that was the point because now I do like try to make sure to have ginger tea at some point in my day to be like, oh, look at me
Yeah.
treating myself to some health. This has been so much fun. We have 2 traditions on how to close out to all the men I've tolerated before. We have to reflect and then we have to walk forward in joy. So if you had to come up with like the cross stitch on the pillow of the lesson that you would want people to carry with them from this episode, what would you want to make sure, like, hey, if you zoned out and watched TikToks while you were watching this, at least know this.
I would say the next time that you get diet advice, know that you absolutely should not take it.
There you
And
go.
check in with how you feel. And if it resonates, great, run with it. And if not, then take it as a grain of salt because honestly, you don't need someone else to tell you how to eat or how not to eat.
Yeah.
It's all available.
I think mine would be like, guilt is way out of fashion. I don't care what the Pope says. Like, it's just, why are we at the point, like, my friends and I have spent the last several weeks strategizing how to get Taylor Swift tickets. And like people are always like, because people are worried about money, like, oh, that's going to be so expensive. Like, there are so many steps, this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, now that I'm 30, my life motto is, what, I'm going to die without doing that? No. Like, just,
Yeah.
just,
You just have to make a decision
yeah.
to, like, I'm going to get them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how. It's going to happen.
Have a Snickers, have a Taylor Swift concert, like, dance in the moon. Like, who cares about other people? Because that's what the pandemic taught us, is that we don't actually. Like, so
You might as well care for yourself.
yeah. So your new life motto should be, what, I'm gonna die without doing that? Fuck no.
I love that.
And then we have to manifest something back into the future. So what are you hoping for people as they carry on that lesson?
Ooh, to always have the confidence to eat when they're hungry and say no when they're not, regardless if it's awkward or if it pisses someone off.
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to manifest that eventually we stop having like Instagram memes that are about like, carrots are out, they actually are bad for your midsection and they'll make it huge, and like just all of the stupid language. Like, I hope that the Kardashians eventually figure out what size they actually want to be at, and that we all start loving Lizzo more and appreciating her, but we also like appreciate the fuck it attitude that Meghan Trainor has. Like, I just hope that we stop like telling people like, well, you're not big enough to have had disordered eating, or like, well, you're not skinny enough, or you're too skinny to understand like what it's like to be me. All of that, just like leave it.
Yeah. Amen.
Yep.
I so agree.
Make sure that everyone who's listening knows where to find you and connect with you, and maybe give us TikTok tips.
Ooh, definitely not. I'm not there. But you know what? I am on TikTok. I don't even know what you would call it. Is it handle? So I'm not even going to promo that. But I am on Instagram, and I'm Kiki_Athanas, very Greek. And my website is the same, kikiathanas.com. I am on TikTok, but you know, I'm just not going to go there for
It's
now.
just for news. That's where I get my news, is TikTok, which is, I'm sure, healthy.
Well, it's better than the regular news.
It is.
I'd rather news on carrots than life.
Yeah. I just want some like Gen Zer to really be like, this is what they're lying to you about. And I'm like, I know, right? I've been saying it for years.
God bless those Gen Zers.
Thank you, Gen Z. You're trying so hard, and just like it's all falling on a bunch of deaf ears. Everyone, you know the drill. You have to make sure to like and subscribe. That's how you know that there are new episodes. Leave us a 5-star review because I like affirmations, and comment about what you're enjoying. The Instagram is at Men I've Tolerated Pod. My Instagram is at Natalie K124. That's also my TikTok. And make sure that you're following us on YouTube because that's where all of the still comfies with Jules from Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous end up. There's merch. There's no shortage of To All the Men I've Tolerated Before on the internet. That's why I make you a weekly recap every Sunday on TikTok. So there it is. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including a family function, a magazine title, or the Kardashians making you feel bad for the treat yourself evening you had the night before. Smiles are for joy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for checking out this week's episode. I wanted to jump on and offer a small reminder of the ways that you can connect with us. The first way is our socials. So we are Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram and Natalie K124 on TikTok, my personal Instagram. And you can find us on YouTube and Pinterest under To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. The second way is by becoming a Patreon member. We are well on our way to our 25 member Patreon, where we are going to unlock bonus perks to being a patron member. Shout out to all of our existing patrons. As an independently ran and funded podcast, your support means everything. Another way that you can connect with us is making sure to subscribe and leave comments wherever you can so we can start reading reviews on each podcast episode. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to check out the merch store, and we will see you next week.